We are live.
We are.
Hello. Hello, Shane of Pajodcast Media. Shane Smick is here.
I
Oh,
am.
he's got nothing. He was delayed.
I was delayed. Well, it's just been so long. I mean, how do you even cast? Do I even cast, bro? I don't know anymore.
You do. We've been doing some E3 reaction videos here on the site. We got several up, or we will have by the time people listen to this. So Shane Smick is with us to do one with me here. We're gonna do Ubisoft and Bethesda together, but today for this video we're starting off with Bethesda, the studio that you're familiar with, Mr. Smick.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess to preface everything that that I'm going to say here is that I am a pretty big fan of one franchise in particular from Bethesda, which is the Elder Scrolls. Fallout, I've never really been able to get into, like, especially the RPG ones, like the first-person RPG ones. I don't know. There's just something about them that I don't know if it's the environment or it just, I don't know. I don't like them very much compared to the Elder Scrolls. So everything that I say, though, comes from the perspective of I generally give Bethesda positives for the things that they try and what they do. But
I mean, to be fair, too, Bethesda, the publisher, is who held this press conference at E3. You're more speaking to your affinity towards Bethesda, the developer, because even though you don't lean towards the Fallout games are Skyrim with a freaking, a post-dystopian engine or skin. Like that is their engine. They do a game that they make, and that's a type. But Bethesda did publish a lot of stuff way back when, but it's only until recently that they started acquiring IP. They own id now, and id obviously comes with it. Doom, Quake, a litany of infamous games, or famous, you could say, I guess, because they kind of changed the industry around. But there is still the Todd Howard studio, which kind of, I would say, pushed the ability of Bethesda's publishing firm by such big successes as Oblivion, Fallout 3, and Skyrim, which, believe it or not, sold quite a many game, I believe.
What?
20s of millions of copies. Yeah. So this press conference had nothing to do with the Todd Howard studio that you were affiliated with. There was rumors that there might be a Skyfield, which was a Starfield, sorry, which is rumored to be a space version of the Todd Howard Studios engine, I should say. Who knows? Maybe they'll come up with a new engine, but their formula on space.
My number one disappointment was not seeing Starfield. My number one disappointment.
Something.
So sad.
And I mean, you got to figure it takes those guys so long to make games. And if you look at the way they did things last time, they actually announced Fallout 4 a year before it came out. It was clearly in development for many years before they announced it. And with Skyrim, they actually announced it well before. Same thing with Oblivion. So they decided to take a different approach with Fallout 4, which was to announce it more closer so they'd have more to show. And maybe that's what the approach they're taking with Starfield. Who knows? If Starfield is even a thing, right? That's the thing. That was kind of the disappointment. It'd be nice to know if it was actually a thing, even if they weren't ready to show anything. Even a quick 5 seconds, we're making something that isn't Bethesda or isn't Fallout or isn't Elder Scrolls. Because I think a lot of people are curious to see what that studio does that isn't those two franchises. So,
yeah, I agree, and I think honestly for me this conference, and it's been a few years since I've watched E3 with any kind of concentration.
Second year Bethesda's done a conference, by the way.
Yeah, so
conference in quotes. They do it before E3.
And that's the thing is I don't. There was a lot of stuff to see, but there wasn't a lot of stuff here for me. For example, you look at and yeah, I know that I skew towards the Todd Howard Studio developer, but the one thing I was really interested. I'll get to that in a second. Actually, the stuff that I just found was really light on content. There seemed to be a lot of kind of rehashing of things. For example, Skyrim's Witch Edition. And let's not forget that you can buy special figures to put Link inside the game. Ooh,
so a lot of this would be explained by Shane hasn't seen an E3 in a while. Press conferences are bogged down even by Microsoft and Sony by rehashing, reminding you of things that have done well, or showing a remastered edition in a quick spot in place of any new news because you want to wait or string that stuff along. A lot of that stuff happens. But I mean, I'm with you. Skyrim's a 7-year-old game almost. Like, that game's been out enough times that, it's also coming in VR now. Like, that got announced at another conference.
And don't get me wrong, like, I'm very happy about all of that.
cool. Like, that's all great, but that's a 5-minute thing. Like, I don't even know if that even needs to be in a press conference. Release a press release. Tell us you're releasing Skyrim on the Switch. We get it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. What do you think of the format of their show? They had kind of one of the weirder ones with "Welcome to Bethesda Land," where you got the little amusement park and you got to travel to the different locations.
It was interesting because, well, because
It's a little goofy.
before I watched the whole thing, I just did a quick read up on it, and the internet reaction was a lot stronger than what I think the actual goofy thing was. Like for me, I didn't. I mean, it was fine. It was like kind of a followed style way of doing it, you know, with the narration and whatnot, and the 50s style way of saying things. I didn't really. I mean, it was fine. I think that we're kind of getting to a point where anyone, if you want to catch someone's attention, you have to do something different. I mean, whatever media that you happen to be in, you have to stand out somehow. And yeah, Bethesda does have a reputation to stand on, so they didn't have to do this necessarily, I don't think. But, you know, anything that you can do to get people to talk more about your particular conference that you have, I think is something that that they find worth doing. And I thought it was fine. I thought it was completely within their kind of weird, campy.
I'll say too, although everyone didn't go as hard as they did from a Bethesda line approach, with the exception of mostly EA, Ubisoft a little bit as well. Most people, Sony and Microsoft, were very much like this. The format of coming up with a convenient excuse to show video after video after video without someone on stage talking, so that this just turns into a series of trailers intercut, and then talk once every 30 minutes or so, and just briefly to introduce something else. And that's what the Bethesda Land bit was supposed to allow them to do. I don't mind that format to just pump out trailers. But at a certain point, you're starting to get to a point like, I could have just watched this at home on YouTube, guys. Like, sometimes, especially when you're showing new content, it's useful to have someone explain the actual structure of what you're seeing, because it's like, yeah, this might look cool if it's open world, or like, I have no details about what this is. Like, this is just a trailer, right?
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I know we'll talk about the Microsoft conference after, but for now, I actually found that between Bethesda and Microsoft, I preferred the Microsoft conference, mostly because it was, and maybe I'm thinking it might just be a mind trick, because it seemed like the Microsoft conference had a lot more content per whatever 30 seconds.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Microsoft had way more to show too, to be fair.
Yeah, and it seemed uncharacteristic of them to have that much content to show. So I'm just starting to wonder now, was it just a mind trick because they just had video after video? But yeah, I see what you're saying as far as having someone out to explain why something is great. But unfortunately for Bethesda, a lot of the stuff that they had, with the really good exception of like the Evil Within 2 and Wolfenstein, God, I'm pronouncing that wrong. Anyways,
Wolfenstein, yeah.
They could have, there was a lot of rehashing, right? And there was a lot of rehashing, and I don't really think I need someone to come on stage and explain to me why the Switch version of Skyrim will be great. I don't really care about that. So I think
for that, it's more, you know, the exposure, getting the exposure of everyone watching to announce that there is a Switch version, to build hype for it, to say, oh, well, if you have a Switch, and keep in mind too, the Switch just launched and there's really not that many games for it. Zelda's like the standout, so it's like, hey, go buy this. But yeah, no, I see your point.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I don't believe that the version of Skyrim that's being released on Switch, just as a side note, I don't think that it is the Skyrim Special Edition. So it's still going to look like it did back in the day. So I don't know. So, it's just underwhelming. Underwhelming.
I'll just quickly go over. Shane's talking about the rehash. We'll quickly cover what the rehash was. The rehashes, or the things that have existed already and are just getting a new spin or a new mode. Fallout VR, Doom VR, they had a couple of blocks there where they were showing some VR titles. Doom VR looks interesting. Different way to play it completely. Fallout VR looks like Fallout in VR. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of a tough thing to scale. But again, kind of rehashes. There was the Skyrim Switch information, which, as we discussed, is kind of cool. You know, but obviously nothing real notable, nothing real like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this. They announced some Dishonored 2 DLC, which looked neat. And that's pretty much your rehashes. You know, they did cover
don't forget Elder Scrolls Legend. Yeah.
Yes. Which I pre-registered for that on my tablet. I have played some of it already. It's a decent skin, but my biggest issue is that I'm not as familiar. At least I thought I was, but I guess I'm not as familiar with some of the characters in the Elder Scrolls lore as I might have believed I was. I guess I was kind of hoping for more Oblivion characters. Like, I'm sitting there going, there's no Sheogorath card. At least there wasn't when I was playing. I'm like, how can you not do that? There has to be a Sheogorath. Like, let me build a Sheogorath deck. But they kind of theme it on classes, where it's like, you mix two mana types together and that makes a class. Like think mix swamp and blue together and that's a type of class. And then there's a class that's just swamp. And then, there's more classes in it than a Hearthstone, but I'll check more of it since they've, I played it in early access. So I'll check more of it out once it's actually out, since I have pre-registered for that on my Android tablet. But of course, it's always out to iPhone stuff first because those Android users have to wait. That's what we get for supporting free.
It's just yeah, and I think in general, like for most people, even people who have played Elder Scrolls since Morrowind, like the hundreds of hours I put in, I feel like a lot of the characters aren't as I guess iconic or likely to be known by people. So I think they're also trying to lore build a little bit whilst they do it. If
there's a lot of
just getting traction.
My issue with Legends is there's a lot of generic and generic fantasy type characters. Like this cat is a thief, so it doesn't even have a name. It's just like thief, whatever the race is or whatever tribe he's from and stuff. And you're like, yeah, I mean that's how you do it, and that's how they did it with Hearthstone, or Magic. But at a certain point, you're like I'm kind of leaning in this for the Marvel aspect of it. Like give me Goofy, give me the Jarl in Skyrim. Like give me give me the villain at the end of the Mage Guild's quest in Oblivion. What's his name? Noxramas Noxramas. That's
one of them.
Andy Markowitz or Noxramas is a Hearthstone thing. Yeah, like go to those directions. Yeah, they didn't, or maybe they do now. I don't know. I'll have more to report on that. Continuing with the Elder Scrolls, we'll kind of move on to the big things that kind of was covered at this conference. They focused more on Elder Scrolls Online. That had a Morrowind expansion. I believe the sales of that game are doing okay right now. It is on all platforms, or the major platforms. It is on PC, Xbox One, and Xbox One X. Or whatever they call that now, and the PlayStation 4 and the Pro version of the 4. You and I had talked about this on a previous cast. We both tried Elder Scrolls Online, not really doing it for us.
And even the nostalgia factor at this point, like after playing ESO, even the nostalgia factor, I'm not gonna buy Morrowind. It's just it's an MMO.
I'm happy that MMO is doing well. Good for them.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Some people thinking that this will prolong. This is why the rumors are that Bethesda's focusing on Starfield to get out of the way of the Elder Scrollsness and allow Elder Scrolls Online to kind of dominate that sector for a while. Believe it or not, I'm actually not wrong. I have no problems with that, because I think the longer it takes for them to make the next Elder Scrolls single-player adventure, the greater in scale and the greater in options and everything, and the more time they have to make that different. Because I think Fallout 4 came out and didn't wow people to the point where it's like they need to do more with that engine. We've seen it with Oblivion and Skyrim. Now it's take that thing to the next level, maybe mechanically even.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and I'm not sure if you've noticed, but in the past year or two, there have been a couple of space RPGs out there, and I think that
Destiny.
There's been a couple. There's been just a few.
It's a big thing right now, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that Bethesda needs to do what they do and show them why. Todd Howard's Bethesda needs to show them why they are like pretty much the preeminent name in open world RPGs. I think they can do it. I have in my mind.
Just to stick on that studio for the last little bit here, like Starfield is interesting. The concept of it, which is that we don't know what the concept is yet at all. We know it's space. We know it's the real question is, I don't know how much people are going to accept Bethesda's jank anymore. Like that was a big deal with Fallout 4. It released. It didn't release necessarily. I wouldn't say more broken than Skyrim. It just, I think, felt like it was more broken because they added more features. And just because they add more features doesn't mean the features are without the level of jank that you can expect from a Bethesda game, just due to the size and scale. And one of the big features that was added in Fallout was base building, and it obviously didn't work to perfection. You couldn't get fences to line up completely because things didn't pin together and things weren't mapping correctly. And of course, I'm sure user community patches and everything else has since fixed this or changed some of the things, but it's still one of those things where you start to sit there and go, but space has a lot more variables than a regular, just a piece of land. So then you're sitting there and thinking, is it going to be amazing or awful that they would make a space game? Because if it stays with the level of jank that you're used to, you would figure that you're going to see some serious jank in space. Ships climbing mountains. I don't know.
It's interesting though, because that's a good point. And I mean, I will be the first to say that despite my love for the Elder Scrolls games specifically, because that's what I've got the most experience with, they are definitely not free of sometimes game-breaking bugs. I will 100% acknowledge that. Although I've got to say, Morrowind, I bought it on Xbox when it came out, or not after. Oh no, I guess I bought the game.
Xbox Original, for those who don't know.
Yeah,
that's right. The big black hunk of glory, that beast.
Just remember the box that was as big as the monitor you're looking at and as huge as the old TV you used to own that had a vacuum tube in it. That was the
Remember when you didn't need to buy weights because your console used to be able to stand in for you as a replacement? That's the Xbox.
Yeah, that's what it was. But yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, though, I bought the Platinum Edition, which I assume already had fixes. Anyways, I didn't really notice too many bugs. I noticed that the bugs became more prevalent as they got newer, but they always fixed them through online updates, so it wasn't a big deal.
Well,
but
let's be real too. The expectation for bugs when Morrowind came out and for bugs to scale was way different than it is now, right? Like back then, it was like the level of bugs you would accept and how often you would see them. Like it would be like, well, I maybe I saw 30 or 40 over my 50, 60 hour playthrough, right? Like at that point, you're like, cool. But nowadays,
back in my day,
our expectations are higher.
We bought games that were complete games. We didn't get no dulk. We expect any microtransactions. We didn't expect day one patches to fix vulnerabilities that destroy the entire gameplay experience on day one. No, you bought a game because you know that it had been through like 6+ months of QA alone just to make sure that it was a quality product. I'm not saying that we should go back there because there's just too much demand apparently, and budgets are getting tighter and all this other good stuff. I get why we're going this way. I do remember a time when there were very few game-breaking bugs that you would find without doing a whole bunch of experimentation. So I just want to throw that out there. Anyways, dating myself a bit.
No, it's fine. I think we could segue from this talk into Elder Scrolls to what is probably the most notable Bethesda news out of this event, and that was the Creation Club. They announced the Creation Club, which is... So they didn't detail exactly how it would work, like word for word, but the gist that I got out of it was that there's going to be paid user mods. So Steam tried this for a hot minute before they pulled it away instantly, but that's because they allowed it to be completely open. And then, of course, people were stealing other people's mods and selling them because that's how that works when you make this stuff open. So it seems like you're going to be able to submit your mods to Bethesda themselves. They will curate them to determine A, if it's your mod and you actually worked on it, and B, determine if it's actually worthwhile to charge, and then curate that to find mods that they will support, but from a ability to charge, so you can make money on your mod content.
They also do a little bit of QA apparently, because they said that they'll all be save game compatible, and they won't break your game, which that's huge. That basically, I mean that gives
you need to curate this mod content before you allow people to charge for it, because
you
have to confirm that those people created it. Like that's obviously first priority number one, because if you're going to allow people to charge for mods, I mean they should be charging for the mods they built. You can't just take people's mods and charge for them. That's a nightmare world. And like you said, B, it's a QA. Let's make sure these all work with everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it was interesting for me because I didn't even know. This is how removed I've been from hardcore console gaming. I didn't even know that they had actually allowed modding for console versions of the Elder Scrolls, for example, and Fallout.
It isn't a great experience right now, to my understanding. A lot of people have crashes on Xbox One and PS4 for adding saves, but I think the idea is the hope with this curation process. I imagine, whether you charge or not might be up to Bethesda. Like you might be able to get the QA aspect of this without charging, but they might force a charge on that so that they can justify doing their QA time on the mod. I don't know.
My guess
they didn't detail any of these details. They just kind of said, we're going to be doing some sort of system where we're going to allow creators to charge.
For speculation's sake, based on because I listened, I didn't listen to any commentary whilst this was going on, so I listened very closely to what exact words they were using, and the words they said was that they were going to work with the very best creators, which tells me that they are going to be I think just what we talked about. They're going to do the QA and whatnot, but they're also going to they won't necessarily, maybe there will be an open submission process within a certain group of people or something like that. It doesn't sound like they're just accepting mods from anybody, which has upsides and downsides. I think for this first kind of step, though, if we're going to talk about paid DLC where the creator gets paid reasonably, hopefully they get reasonably compensated for it, then I think that that's got to be a good first step. Is they have to start with getting the absolute highest quality stuff from the modding community first. Once they figured out how to make that system work, then they can extend it outwards. And if that's what they do, then I think that they're on the right track for that. I'm kind of torn on the whole modding thing. I guess on one hand, I think that information should be free and people spent their time on this, but they're doing it for the love of the game and all that. But on the other hand, I recognize as well that especially as games get more advanced, people can put thousands of hours of their life into
these mods,
into these content, and some of them, like, you mentioned Skywind.
I was just going to say, Skywind is a Morrowind remake in the Skyrim engine that's been kind of in different stages of active development, but it's not completely done yet.
And it's also free, And
but I mean, you got to imagine developers like the people on Skywind, if a paid option for mods was available, they would have been exploring it from day one, because I think it would allow them to get more support, because then people who do work on it can go, people would pay for this because everyone wants a Oblivion or Morrowind remastered and a better engine, because they just seem to be keep remaking Skyrim for some reason.
Yeah, no, it's true. And so I think that honestly it's unfortunate, I guess, for the people who can't afford to play really good content that's made by creators. But on the other hand, I think that for the people who are able to support it, because just Patreon alone, I don't think maybe it is enough for some people, but if you really want to speed up development of something, give someone enough money who's passionate about it to do it for their full-time job or a part-time job or something, make it something that
for a period. Yeah. They might not do it forever, but they get paid for this project, and then they do that for X amount of time. And that's something they can explore doing.
And then they get to do what they love. The people who love their work get to get more stuff. It seems like it's a pretty virtuous cycle. I don't really think that I don't have really that much bad to say about it, other than it's
provided there's no technical issues or loopholes or ways that the community can abuse this. Like, this has obviously got to be properly regulated. Like, we're talking about a finance system here inside of a game. We've seen with MMOs, even with MMO in-game currency, studios have had to eventually start adding microtransactions just because gold farmers were a thing. Like, you pretty much have to respond to the economy of your community, and this literally is an economy of content. So, it's going to have to be managed. But if they're prepared to handle that, I think they could actually produce something that I think other people will look at. Not every game needs mods, but I think the Bethesda games specifically are an example of a studio that builds maybe not the best engine, but they build a world that's open to as many different narrative takes, or as many different, like, mods work well, I guess is what I'm saying, for games such as Skyrim, such as Fallout. Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of so much like narrative space.
Especially since they kind of present the games very open-ended. They don't give you a character with a name or a completely defined narrative focus. They just drop you into that world. There is a little bit of a story you can gauge, but people can craft an entire expansion of a guild if they want to from a content perspective. So allowing them to charge for that, I think, just means we're going to see more of that. And I think it actually will mean we're going to see more developers of other games experiment with developing content in these developing mod creation tools, or developing mods with these tools. And that's something you started seeing even in other games that Mario Maker is a perfect example. There's a couple of developers of hard indie games that have developed levels in Mario Maker, and I think it'd be cool. Let's see some people's take. Let's see people's take in Bethesda games. So yeah, that covers the mod creation. So there was 2 big game announcements. Shane kind of covered them already. That are Evil Within 2 and Wolfenstein. How familiar are you with these franchises?
I am.
Like, they're obviously both older franchises. Like, Evil Within is kind of based in things previously. Like, the first Evil Within reboot game came out in like a couple years back, and it didn't light the world on fire, but it was like a attempt at a modern day mix of Silent Hill with a little more action.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't really sure. Like, I watched the trailer, and I wasn't really sure what to make of it. I'm not familiar with the game at all, really.
Listen, I don't want to just call it Silent Hill, because there's more going on. I didn't play the original Evil Within, but I saw enough of it to kind of gather what was going on. But it's kind of Silent Hill. You go to a dark town, there's horrible shit going on. There's an alternate dimension that you travel through with a thing, and there's an evil hell dimension and all this other jazz, and there's monsters and characters, and it's a survival horror dark game. The big issue people have with the first one was the gameplay, despite the horror elements being really good. It didn't control really great. The shooting wasn't really perfect. It kind of needed some work on that. So everyone was kind of like, hey, maybe they'll nail some of this down with the sequel. Like, maybe this is just proof of concept from a universe perspective, because it seemed like the universe did enough for people that it's like, yeah, there's not that many. A lot of horror games now are going to the era of you don't have any controls at all. You just have to run. right? So it was the people who did like this was like, it was nice to have another Silent Hill / Resident, old school Resident Evil-esque thing, but a little more modern. It had gear and loot and crafting and a million other things you expect in every game nowadays, because that stuff's all in there. But
there's two things that kind of confused me about the trailer. The first one was why was okay? It's gonna sound silly. So basically, there's two. The first thing was like, I thought maybe he was going completely like fucking crazy. And
that's the thing they leaned to in the first game. Yeah. Like
but
the whole white stuff,
really
I believe, is the alternate dimension. Like that's him like fault fading into the dimension. Think like, on Silent Hill, the city looks normal to everyone else, but when you go there, suddenly you're lost, and then it's because they theme it like there's another dimension that you warp into.
Which I think is fine. I mean, I actually there's a sick part of me that really appreciates that kind of playing with your mind as you play the game, and I like, especially in horror games, which I love. I haven't played a good horror game for a while, but I think that's the right angle to approach it from, because if you never know if what you saw was actually real or not, like, oh, that's beautiful. The second thing that I didn't really understand is why there was so much milk and people were drowning in milk all the time. Like,
yeah, that was their narrative justification for the alternate dimensions goop or something. I'd listen. Have you seen Stranger Things? They do creepy stuff to you. I don't know. It's a thing.
Okay, well, that was what confused me, but otherwise, it looks like a fairly compelling horror game, and it does look a little bit more towards the original, like the older Resident Evils, which I didn't get a chance to play too much of when I was a kid, but I
4
did
and 5.
appreciate when I got a chance.
I know you and I enjoyed those together.
Which
4
ones?
and 5. 4 and 5. You and I enjoyed those together. Yeah, those were fantastic, and they were a little more actiony, but still kind of kept some of that tense horror elements.
And let's never forget Dead Space, man. Oh,
yeah, it's a shame that EA has abandoned that franchise or abandoned any idea of building a horror game, because there's a studio there, Visceral, that knows how to build pretty fun horror games. But for me, the Evil Within is a wait and see game. Like, I didn't get the first one, even though I liked the horror elements, because I was just like, it doesn't look like it controls well. It's not reviewing really good. For me, I'm going to look to see what kind of things they fixed up about this one system, because the skin's great. Like, I feel like this is kind of the case with a lot of games now. Skins aren't all that we're showing up to games for. Skins are half of the conversation. The other half of the conversation is A, does it play well, and B, do the systems inside the game, since every game is a series of systems that you can find in pretty much every free-to-play game now, do they interact in a way that is a fun grind, that fits this tone and that I want to keep doing and fits this skin? And Evil Within had a lot of elements, like the crafting elements in the original ones seemed pretty neat. Like, you could, like Dead Rising style, you could combine certain things together and repair your stuff. Like, if you ever play The Last of Us 2, there's certain elements of that. And just missing that, I think, that important gameplay component of just, this doesn't really feel fun to shoot. It kind of feels clunky. Which the old Resident Evil games felt clunky too. Like, don't get me wrong, you can't go back to Resident Evil 4 now. Like, it does feel clunky, but at the time it didn't, and I think that's a big thing. If they fix that stuff, then I'll see. And if the reviews are good and strong, then I think it'll be something I'll check out. There isn't that many great survival horror games. Like, that's the thing. Like, traditional survival horror. You don't get me wrong, the Outlasts and the Splendor, or what is it? Splendor. You know what I mean? The Slenderman,
yeah.
The games where you're just running and it's just all about jump scares. I get that whole thing blew up, especially on the internet, but that's not what I come to horror games for. I come for the tense. You're stuck in an environment that you don't know what's going on, but you do have some things at your disposal, like that Silent Hill. Yeah.
And it's where you have to make a choice, right? I mean, there's always a trade-off as to what you do. I mean, do you go into this dark, abandoned-looking area where you might find supplies, but you might also find, like, death at the hands of something that's much bigger and faster than you? I don't know. Good question.
Dead Space.
You've got your gun with your 6 ammo. Yeah. Oh, God, the cutter. Man, I will never forget. Anyways.
That game where, sure, you could kill what might be out there, but you're still slowly walking into the next room with your gun out ready, because you're like, if I make a mistake, I'm dead.
Well, and remember too that, like, especially in the first Dead Space, you have very limited ammo. Like, you are on the razor's edge at all times. The decisions you make will affect whether you live or die in the next 5 minutes.
Even within the original was trying to lean into some of that too. Although I believe, depending on how good you were, I think, or how well you crafted or stuff, you could eventually, like, subvert that. And that's a big thing you have to, I think, games like this have to try to avoid, is not letting you subvert that, because if they give you too much power, it leans the other direction where you just don't care, because you're murking all these monsters in seconds.
I think you can have an element of progression without subverting the scares, because basically you can have, like, by the end of Dead Space 1, it was still scary because I had like fully upgraded weapons as much as I could get, but that didn't mean that the next enemy that I fought wasn't 7 times as powerful as the last one,
Or
and I had
like
to use everything at my
screens, yeah, the
disposal.
size of the screen, yeah.
It's size of the screen, exactly. So
All
they
right,
can do it. But yeah.
the last game, as we mentioned, Wolfenstein 2. Yeah. So the first Wolfenstein that got remade for PS4, like there's been several Wolfenstein games. They even made some on PS3. I actually played a couple on the PS3 days. I think I played it on PC though, which was the one before the last one. They've kind of been leaning more into you have a little bit of superpowers, or at least the one I played was. Since then, it's been kind of more, not completely straightforward, but like more of that, I don't want to say Fallout, but they are leaning into an older aesthetic. Like, like the music's a little older. It's kind of its own little world with its own stuff. A lot of people really love that Wolfenstein remake, which was, I believe it was called The New Order, the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, and just for the record, this new one coming out will be the 11th Wolfenstein game.
Yeah. So The New Order was really, really well received. And the sequel, which is called The New Colossus, which, yeah, this looks interesting.
Man,
there's a lot going on here. Like,
yeah, the trailer.
Like, to me, Wolfenstein is a game that I look to and go, like, how it's transformed. Like even with the New Order, which is something I like I said, I hadn't played, but I did see lots of. It started leaning in the direction where I'm like, is this basically the new better Call of Duty? Like this is a shooter, but like the RPG components are there a little bit more that Call of Duty isn't doing, and the narrative and the story just nails it. Like you just want to run around in that world and engage with everything. So many interesting characters, I think, is what the big thing is. A big takeaway from at least the trailer they showed. Like you were just like, this world looks super interesting. It helps to say other than that, since I'm not as familiar with it, but man.
It's interesting. I do very much appreciate alternate timeline games, especially when they have really, really big consequences. Like, what if the Nazis run World War II? Now, I wasn't really that big fan of. There was an Xbox 360 PS3 game that kind of followed a similar.
Yeah. They made a sequel to that too. THQ made that. Name's escaping me right now.
I want to say it's Resistance, but that's not it. It's something like that.
Resistance was the PS3 franchise that was made by
the Aliens, yeah.
Sorry, made by the Ratchet guys, I believe.
But yeah, anyways, that one, whatever it was called, wasn't as compelling for me. I don't think I never ended up even finishing it. But just watching this trailer and without knowing anything about really that much about Wolfenstein, other than it's a shooting game with Nazis, it looks really good. I don't know. The trailer is so compelling that I think I will, when I am able to, pick up this game for sure.
Kind of reminded me of the first time I saw the Dishonored universe. Like sometimes you see a world, an open new world, and you're just like, yes, that skin is something so fresh that it's like I want to delve into that. We were talking about this on one of our last casts. But it was just like kind of getting sick of Call of Duty and even to a degree sick of Uncharted. But we're saying what we're actually sick of is just these constrained universes that have to, it doesn't matter what perspective they put me in. It doesn't matter if they put me in the future, in the past, or in the middle. It's always military. And I'm just sick of seeing that, right? And we were comparing that to things like the Marvel Universe, which why they can cash cow for so long is because it's an actual universe, not a world, which means they can completely change tone by taking you anywhere, right? And you look at something like Wolfenstein, it's a merge, it's an alternate history, right? Like I kind of wish more games were doing, stop sticking to something that's defined. Define your own world. Sure, you can use things in real existence, but the more you define your own world, the more fresh things we're going to see. And you can only play, even if we were talking about Uncharted in this regard, even if you nail the mechanics of being an Indiana Jones adventurer, after you've taken me across all of the world being an adventurer at a certain point, I'm sick of going across planet Earth being an adventurer. I've done it, like at that point you kind of have to do more. So, or present a different case. And, Wolfenstein obviously clearly doing that with its alternate history stuff. I just wanted to find the name of that game, but I couldn't.
Yeah, it's because it's that
forgettable. Talking about they made a sequel.
Yeah.
They made a sequel.
Oh, I guess
Homefront.
That was the one. Yeah, it was for me. It wasn't
because they made a sequel. They made a sequel that was North Korea themed.
Oh, right, I remember now. Yeah,
yes,
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But again, not as well liked. Those games weren't as well received, kind of short. But yeah, Wolfenstein kind of leaning into something similar. Wolfenstein 2 for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that'll cover it.
Yeah,
that's Bethesda. long story short, for me, Bethesda doesn't deserve a press conference. Not right now. They would have if they would have had a game teaser. I felt like their conference was missing a big surprise because we knew Wolfenstein 2 and Evil Within kind of in advance because those were titles they had made. You know, and it's an off year right now for some of their other studios. So there just wasn't really a lot to show, and it just kind of felt like they stretched things on to say, "Hey, we got stuffs." And you know, like you said, like announcements like you can use Link's gear in Skyrim. Listen, if I was playing Skyrim, I would totally do that. That sounds cool, but that's a novel thing. That is not a press conference announcement. And yeah, that's kind of my take on Bethesda. Like to me, you should have just teased Starfield at the end. That would have ended that conference on at least a good note. You should have teased something.
5 seconds of just some like person in space doing something, and that's all you need. You need to have a title. Just say like coming in 2025 or whatever.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Well, I think that'll do it for Bethesda. You know, still waiting on games, but you know, we'll see how Wolfenstein and Evil Within are. Those seem to be their big titles coming out in the next slate, so that'll cover that.
Indeed. All right, so for this edition of Reacting to E3, I'm Shane Smith, back for a bit, and with me is Ryan Jameson. I got too much power.
My middle name's not Jameson, but okay. Bethesda.
That's cool.
You did it.
We'll see you next time.
We took a trip on Bethesda Land. It was okay. Like most rides.
It was okay. It was all right, yeah. Maybe
not memorable.
I'll probably go back next year. Yeah, not really.
I don't know.
All right. Goodbye.